up guys, EJ here, back with another video, and today it's going to be my weekly movie review roundup, episodes 22 and 23, a two-part episode because it covers the past couple of weeks that I've watched some movies. Yeah, only 6 movies in that time, even though last week Netflix didn't have any new releases on Tuesday. I still had four movies backed up in my short wait list, and they only managed to send me one of them, which was unfortunate. So I only saw a couple movies this week and 4 the previous week. So starting off, last couple Tuesdays ago on May 3rd, I watched The Fifth Wave, directed by Jay Blakeson, starring Chloe Grace Moretz. Yeah, sort of a cool post-apocalyptic sci-fi thriller, a series of alien attacks on the Earth. The first wave, the aliens show up and they knock out the power grid. The second wave, they cause a bunch of earthquakes and tsunamis. The third wave, they sort of weaponize the avian flu, the bird flu, make that like 90% lethal. The fourth wave, the aliens are nicknamed the Others, and they're able to look like humans. Sort of saves on special effects budget, I think, for this movie. The aliens just look like human beings. They send in like ground troops and start picking off remaining human survivors, small survival groups around the Earth. And then of course the fifth wave, I won't go into much detail about it because that'll spoil really the main part of the film. But anyway, Chloe Grace Moretz, a young teenage girl living with her father, played by Ron Livingston, and her younger brother. They're just trying to battle for survival. Eventually her dad, they lose touch with her little brother. She loses touch with her little brother, and he gets taken to a military base, and so she makes it her mission to go after him and go find her little brother, and she basically does this on her own. She actually runs into a guy who helps her out, who's sort of a bit dodgy to say the least. And then there's a sort of subplot of a boy she knew in high school, the hot boy in high school, who's also gets taken to this military base, and there's a whole thing with a bunch of kids at this military base. I won't go into too much detail beyond that. This film kind of has the same sort of vibe as The Walking Dead. A lot of the same kind of scenery and the same kind of shots, but of course in this film it's survivors taking on aliens who look like human beings as opposed to zombies. I like Chloe Grace Moretz. I always have, since her early work in like Kick-Ass and Let Me In, the remake of Let the Right One In. I like her a lot. She's good in this. She does her best. It's not a great film, but that's still, it's still pretty entertaining. I enjoyed it. I'm a sucker for post-apocalyptic, end-of-the-world, alien invasion type movies, and I liked her in this. Liev Schreiber is in it as well, along with Maria Bello, and always good to see Ron Livingston as well. Not a great film. Some cool, interesting twists towards the end. But like I said, the whole idea of the aliens nicknamed the Others, made to look like human beings, obviously saved on like big special effects of like creature makeup effects. So I still enjoyed this film. The Fifth Wave, I gave a 7 out of 10. Alright, moving on to May 4th. I watched The Choice, directed by Ross Katz. Another one of these films based on a Nicholas Sparks novel. So it's your typical romantic drama. This film stars Benjamin Walker as a very popular guy who lives in a coastal town. His girlfriend is played by Alexandra Daddario, who's a knockout. If you've seen her in San Andreas and True Detective, and even the Texas Chainsaw Massacre film she did. But what's her name? Teresa Palmer moves in not next door to Benjamin Walker's house, and the two of them sort of get into an argument right away. But of course, there's this great connection, and they fall in love after she basically wants nothing to do with him. So his choice is Teresa Palmer or Alexandra Daddario. Yeah, some people have it good. Maggie Grace plays Travis's brother. That's the name of Benjamin Walker's character, Travis. Teresa Palmer plays Gabby. Yeah, it's an okay film. I like Teresa Palmer and Alexander Daddario and Maggie Grace. Wasn't a huge fan of Benjamin Walker. He's a good-looking guy and he has a lot of charm and wit. But it's your typical Nicholas Sparks type movie, and of course, towards the end, tragedy strikes, putting a huge strain on their relationship and how it will end up. But all is well in the end, as usual. Some good-looking scenery, some good stuff out on the delta and the boats and that kind of stuff. It has sort of a party atmosphere to it as well. There's lots of barbecuing out in the backyard and just good old boys having a good time, trying to get along with these women. So The Choice, not a great movie. I'm not really a huge fan of these Nicholas Sparks films, besides The Notebook. So The Choice, I gave a 6 out of 10. Alright guys, moving on to May 7th, Thursday. I watched Janis, Little Girl Blue, fantastic documentary about the great legendary Janis Joplin, who I'm a huge fan of. Yeah, just the number of one of the few documentaries I've seen over the past year. Great documentaries about great musicians who died early. I saw Kurt Cobain, Montage of Heck, fantastic documentary on Kurt Cobain and Nirvana, and of course Amy, the Oscar-winning documentary about Amy Winehouse, and now this film, I believe it was released by HBO Films, Janis, Little Girl Blue. Yeah, just another great documentary about a fantastic artist. Yeah, really good movie, directed by Amy Berg, and of course chronicling the life, the unfortunate short life of the great Janis Joplin from her early beginnings in Port Arthur, Texas, where she wasn't a pretty woman, but her voice was so powerful. Yeah, she was made fun of as a child and through high school, and so she took to music. She would go to Austin to sing with bands, and then she got so sick of living in Texas, she wanted to get out of there. So she made her way to San Francisco to join the counterculture crowd. There, of course, she hooked up with Big Brother and the holding company in the mid-60s, like 65, 66, something like that. And of course, then joined all those great groups out there in San Francisco. The type of life she wanted to live, doing drugs and drinking alcohol, hanging out with the people that really understood her and didn't care about her looks, and just were amazed by her incredible voice. Yeah, Janis's voice is one of a kind and probably will never be duplicated. That's why she rose to become such a star. But she was pretty troubled in the fact that she was always looking for approval and validation as a front woman, even though she wasn't beautiful, and that was kind of a big deal for her. But she was fantastic, of course. Blew up at the Monterey Pop Festival in 1967. That was put on, of course, by the Mamas and the Papas, and featured a whole bunch of legendary acts like Jefferson Airplane, Jimi Hendrix, The Who, Otis Redding, and of course Big Brother and the Holding Company with Janis Joplin. Her rendition of Ball and Chain that they showed during the movie is just fantastic. It's one of my favorite performances by her by far. You see it and you're just in awe of the way she delivers that song. And then of course it sort of goes into how she broke up with Big Brother and sort of went with another band, the Cosmic Blues Band. But again, she released great songs with them as well. And then finalizing her career with, oh, I forget the name of the third band that she hooked up with. But anyway, yeah, Janis Joplin, fantastic. The film really tells her story through the letters she writes back home to her family, and of course, great footage of her on stage. Lots of great interviews with all her former bandmates and the people that knew her. It's a fantastic documentary. If you get a chance to see it, I highly recommend it. If you like this kind of music, classic rock and classic flower rock from the 1960s, early 70s, that whole San Francisco flower power scene. Yeah, Janis Joplin, fantastic artist. The first real great female of rock and roll. I'm a huge fan of Janis Joplin, and this documentary does her justice. Alright, moving on to December 7th. December 7th. May 7th, I watched Days of Confused for the Movie Reviewers 100. We were doing Matthew McConaughey week. So I picked, of course, the classic Richard Linklater film, starring a whole cast of great young actors who, a lot of them would go on to great careers. People like Matthew McConaughey, Ben Affleck, Cole Hauser, Parker Posey, Joey Lauren Adams, Mila Jovovich, Adam Gilberg, and so on. Of course, fantastic movie with great music, great cars, great drug teen movie. Yeah, set on the last day of high school in a Texas town. If you want to see my full review of Days of Confused, check out the link in the description. As for Janis, Little Girl Blue, sorry, I forgot to mention I gave it a 8 out of 10, and Days of Confused also a 8 out of 10. Alright guys, moving on to this past week. On Tuesday, May 10th, I watched The Forest. Yeah, horror film directed by Jason Zada, starring Natalie Dormer, of course, from Game of Thrones. Yeah, Natalie Dormer plays Sarah, and her twin sister Jess Price. Jess goes missing in Japan, and it's rumored to believe that she ventured into Japan's famed Akagara Forest, which is nicknamed Suicide Forest because it's famous for all the dead bodies and suicides that have taken place there. Yeah, the forest sort of at the foothills of Mount Fuji in Japan. If you've seen pictures of it on the internet, you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, I guess Sarah goes off to Japan to look for her sister, and she's like, I gotta go find her. She has this sort of sisterly connection, the twin sister connection. When she feels her sister, I don't know how twins do it, but they just have she calls it a sound that she hears in her body. She knows her sister is alive. So she obviously thinks that her sister's not dead, even though all the people she knows and the people in Japan tell her, yeah, your sister's probably already dead. She goes into the forest anyway. She goes in there with a couple of guys, a local Japanese tour guide, and also a guy called Rob, an Australian dude who offers to help her and take her into the forest to go look for her sister. Of course, when she goes into the forest, they stumble upon her sister's tent, but her sister's nowhere to be found. So she's like, I'm gonna stay here overnight and wait for her to come back. Meanwhile, the two other guys are like, no, you can't stay in here overnight. This forest will drive you crazy, drive you mad, lead you to eventually kill yourself, because you see visions and spirits and all that kind of stuff. So it's your typical horror film. It's a cool setting, great setting for a horror movie. The famed suicide forest in Japan. So I like that aspect of the movie, but it falls into the usual trappings of modern horror movies these days. I mean, is to go far as to see like Japanese schoolgirls running around in the forest. There's like the usual jump scares, that kind of stuff. And the guy she goes in there with, she like totally doubts him at one point, and because he's obviously got some other ulterior motive, and then he comes back to save her, and then she still stays with him. I just didn't get it. It's like, if I was her, I would have like, get that guy away from me. I don't want to be anywhere near this guy after what he did or what she thinks he did. But she stays with him somehow. The ending is kind of cool. Yeah, there's a cool little twist at the ending. Kind of reminded me of the end of Drag Me to Hell. It had kind of shades of that. And I've always liked Natalie Dormer. I like her a lot in Game of Thrones. She's fantastic on that show. And yeah, just a pretty face and interesting look. But there isn't really much for her to do here. I was kind of disappointed. I wanted to really like it, but in the end, I just thought the forest was merely okay, average at best. So the forest, I gave a 6 out of 10. Alright, moving on to finally last night, May the 14th, I watched The Holiday, again for the Movie Reviewers 100. Because this week is Kate Winslet week, and Kate Winslet's my favorite actress, so I decided to watch and review The Holiday last night. So you'll find my my video on that movie, my full review of The Holiday, in the description box down below as well. Yeah, really fun romantic comedy with Kate Winslet, Jude Law, Cameron Diaz, and Jack Black, which I like a lot. So there you have it, 6 movies over the past couple of weeks. At least this week. I know there's some new movies coming out on Tuesday in my Netflix queue, and one day they will send me Legend and a couple other movies that are still sitting in my queue, and eventually I will catch up to my Netflix queue, but I don't know what happened this past week. I was expecting to get Legend and maybe a couple more, and all I got was The Forest. So anyway, thank you for watching as always, and until next time, I'll see ya.
Bond. James Bond.